Mandukya Karika, Pradhan Mantra. Om Bhadram Karnebhi Shrunuyama Deva Bhadram Pashe Makshabhirya Jatra Sirairangaye Sustuvagang Sastanuvi Vyashema Deva Hitan Yadayuh Swasti na Indro Vriddhashava Swasti na Pusha Vishwaveda Swasti nastaksho Aristanemi Swasti no Brihaspatirdadhatu Om Shanti 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 Hari Om. So we have reached the end of the third chapter and we have been discussing meditation. Excuse me. So we had discussed meditation and obstacles. In that talk, we had explained what is meditation. It was a long discussion, and for many of you, it might have been repetitive because we have discussed these things in Raj Yoga too. Just to look back, there are four major obstacles, distractions. Four major distractions: laya, vikshep, kashaya, and rasaswad. Those of you who are into meditation may be knowing about these four. But mind it, for most of us, meditation just means sitting down for a while, maybe 15 minutes, maybe half an hour, and be silent, sitting quietly, trying to breathe in a rhythmic breathing. These things relax your mind. And most times when people are talking about meditation, the popular teachers who are talking about meditation, essentially they are talking about mental relaxation. That's not meditation. Meditation is something deep. By deep, we mean when you have a meditation based on the path of knowledge. What we are discussing here, where you say that Brahman alone is real, everything else is mithya, false. Or you take the path of bhakti where you have an Easter and you try to focus only on that. So once you have overcome the initial obstacles like attachment, aversion, etc., then comes the higher problems that mind has to encounter. See, when we look at this world, we know that for us, this world is made up of gross objects, simply objects. And our body, our body is made up of the same thing from which this world is made. So our body is gross. And day and night, we are taking in this gross world everything, the smell that we have, the taste that we have, things that we see, they're extremely gross. Consequently, the mind stays at an extremely gross level. And that's why you'll find that most people, they deride religion, they make fun of religion, they come up with hundreds of objections against religion. This is true particularly of the West because West is steeped, deeply steeped in materialism. What people forget that India has always loved life. Those of you might have listened to our talks on Hinduism series where we have explained some of the mantras from the Ved. There you can see that the sages are teaching us to pray for a good life. So much so that, unlike as in other religions, gaining wealth and enjoying life, these are two important purposes of life, earth and calm. People, you see, they are so many misconceptions about Hindu religion. And our sages said that striving for mukti, striving for liberation is meant for the chosen few. Only when you have gone through all these enjoyments, and once you say that I don't want heaven too, it's easy to say that I don't want heaven. Most people who are at the age of dying, who have grown old, they don't even want to die. Forget about giving up the desire of heaven. They don't even want to die. Their attraction for the world is so strong that they don't even understand what heaven might mean. So, because we are so attached to attraction, and attraction at an extremely gross level. Say, for example, you might have seen if you give food to dog, how the dog pounces upon it. The dog doesn't release the finer things about it. And there are dogs, they don't like cooked meat, they like raw meat. That's what I have heard. Because these animals, they live entirely in senses. And we human beings, who evolved from being animals to human beings, we are trying to go back to the level of senses. How sad. And that is why most of us have forcibly made our minds extremely gross. Now, once you start meditating, the first thing is to get out of these gross things. So, your love for good things in life, as they say, food, clothes, recognition, love, friendship, companionship, all these things will go away. You would like to be left alone. That's not loneliness, it's being alone. And you will love to be living in the ideal world. You'll prefer to be introspective more. Your love for finer music, finer paintings, finer art, it will grow. Only then you are ready for meditation. Now, most people who go for meditation, they just make the pockets of the teachers heavier, nothing more than that. Anyway, it's good. I mean, you are in a kind of life that offers only enjoyment. From there, you are moving away and going to some ashram, some center, and where you are learning to be quiet, learning to be alone. That itself is a great achievement, no doubt. But anyway, that's not the real thing. And once your mind starts becoming subtle, I can assure you, in the case of most of my dear listeners, mind is still gross. So don't conclude things about yourself. It's not to demean you, I'm just stating a fact. Then mind tends to go into inertness known as lie. And sometimes mind starts rushing towards some object. You're sitting for meditation. Suddenly some thought comes and it becomes extremely powerful. It will make you get up from your seat. It can be so powerful. And then there is Kashaya. First one is lie, then Vikshep. Kashaya is more dangerous because it takes you to some old thought. In one of the commentaries on Yoga Sutras, one teacher has very beautifully explained it, that there might be a yogi who has given up everything and who might even have lost his family. He is deep into meditation and a stage comes when suddenly memories come haunting and he starts thinking of his wife and thinks, oh, my wife, she was so good. She used to give me so much of joy. And suddenly your mind goes there. And mind is so subtle that it powers to get hooked to something becomes exponentially strong. Now, unless you get into meditation, you will not understand these things. And people keep on asking such ordinary things that we don't even feel like answering. When you ask a question, you have to know the subject. See, when you were in school, you were studying a subject. Only when you had studied a particular chapter that you ask certain questions to the teachers. Here, people do nothing, people know nothing, people have studied nothing. They simply come barging, they come charging at you. That is not the way to learn. And the last of it is you start enjoying state of meditation known as rasa swad. Here, just to remind you that Mandukya Karika is a scripture. Here, a particular kind of conversation, particular kind of discourse is going on. Those of you who might have studied something about types of discussion, you see, India was extremely advanced in certain areas, and it was not advanced in certain other areas. When it came to literature, philosophy, etc., it was extremely advanced. Just imagine people talk about Western logic, and logic, known as Nyaya, is a way of life in India in certain areas. In Mithila is famous for its Nyaya. And from there, in Navadvip in Bengal came Navya Nyaya. It's a way of life. Forget about arguments. So when people keep on talking about Western philosophy, Socrates and Aristotle and logic, it's ridiculous. Forget about just knowledge. Here people made that way of their life. People talk about Christianity. Think of Hinduism here, where religion has entered every sphere of life. Now, in discussion also, they had three major three major kinds of discussion. First is known as Vad. Vad means when teacher is explaining something to a student. For example, here we are into Vad. Here we expand a subject, explain a subject. Then there is Jalpa. In Jalpa, you try to dislodge the arguments of your opponent, as often happens in parliaments. Or when kids quarrel, you might have seen quads arguing and quarreling. They're always trying to prove the other party wrong. And third, more interestingly, is Vitanda. There you don't have to prove anything. What you do is you just go on opposing everything that the person in front of you says. Mandukya Karika belongs to Vad. It's explaining something. Now we are coming to this end, and the next chapter will begin. There, this will become much more important. You need to understand very much that it's not here to contradict something. If it is contradicting something, it is only to impress certain ideas in our minds. They don't even want to explain certain things the way things are explained. They want us to change our way of life. They want us to change our views of life. They want us to move on the path of immortality. How do you do it? First, you need to make your mind calm. Once your mind becomes calm, once you withdraw yourself from the world and you start introspecting, you become indrawn. You become contemplative, from there meditative, and your mind becomes little focused. Once your mind becomes little focused, you start walking, you start moving on the road to immortality. This is being described. Yadana liyate chittam nacha vikshipyate punaha aninganam anabhasam nispannam brahma tattada. 46. Oh, 46, I think we had explained up to, I think, 43 very clearly. Basically, this is what is being discussed. In 44, it says that as your mind becomes little dark, in the sense you start enjoying the darkness. Oh, we need to start from 44. Sorry. लय संबोधयेत् चित्तम विक्षिप्तम समेत पुनः Sakashayam vijaniyat samapraptam na chalet. Sorry, we need to start from 44. So as your mind starts going into a stupor, as in sushupti, as in deep sleep, it needs to be brought back and fixed in self-knowledge, atma vivek. And if the mind gets distracted with some gross object, it needs to be calmed down. Once I remember, it's a funny thing, I was very young and extremely immature, because in monastic life, 25, 27 is no age. So, my favorite example, once I was sitting for meditation and instantly some thought came about a brother monk who had done some wrong to me. And I became so angry. It was a very silly thing. The whole idea was so silly, so silly. And ultimately, I could not contain my anger. Under normal conditions, it would have never expressed. For example, supposing I had been reading or walking or talking, this would not have come. Simply because I was meditating, sitting for meditation rather, whole thing became extremely powerful. And I got up from my seat, went out in search of him, and gave him the peace of my mind. I still feel so guilty about it, extremely apologetic about it. But this is what happens. Unless you are with your teacher, unless there is a teacher to guide you practically at every step, and unless you are very careful, it can be disastrous. Because here in this case, he was a brother monk and he took it in his stride. The same thing can be about lust. Your mind may get attracted towards some female and you can never come out of it. It can be disastrous. So, yada lay sambodhaya chittam vikshiptam samet punaha. As your mind becomes tamasic, getting into stupor, bring back the ideal. And if it becomes vikshipta, if it starts moving away from the ideal, make it calm. Make it calm. How? When you tend to go into some kind of slumber, many of you might have experienced it. The moment you sit for meditation, you tend to fall asleep. So you need to have a little more time and wake yourself up and go on meditating. Slowly it goes away. The second one is when your mind becomes rajasic, mind becomes more active. That is when this problem of vikshepa comes. Sorry, I don't know. Your mind gets attracted to some object. So, see, your mind has to work at two different levels. One is the mind which is trying to focus itself. And the second aspect is your own mind keeping a watch over it. Can you imagine how difficult meditation can be? The term here is chittam. It's the same mind which works in four different ways. First one is known as chitta. When is the mind stuff? It collects data. Then there is mind known as mana. It organizes data. Then there is buddhi, it fixes data. And then there is ahankara, where it identifies itself with data. It's like a gentleman who is father to his kid, husband to his wife, and boss to his colleagues in his office. Basically, it's the same person. It just, depending on what kind of function he's performing, he is known by different names. Mind is just like that. Depending on what kind of work it is doing, it is known either as chitta or mana or buddhi or ahankara. In meditation, as also in life, you need to have very clear perception of your mind. On the one hand, your mind is working, and on the other hand, you are watching your mind. This happens, we all do it all the time, particularly when you're trying to fall asleep. You might have noted that so many thoughts come and you want to fall asleep, and you are watching yourself, you know, watching your dreams, and you say that I shouldn't be seeing dreams, I shouldn't be thinking like that, and things like that. Sometimes we chide ourselves for thinking certain wrong things. But in meditation, these two aspects, where one aspect is trying to focus, concentrate, and another aspect is keeping a watch over it. The moment you are going into tamas, into darkness, you have to wake yourself up. When you become hyperactive, trying to fix yourself to some objects, you need to calm down that mind, calm down. Sakashayam vijaniyat. And if some kind of past obsession comes, basically it's seed. When we have these two things, laya and vikshep. Laya and vikshep belong to something like, plants that you can see very clearly. But kashaya is the seed form. As you know, that destruction of seeds extremely difficult. Long ago in 1960s, America sent some wheat to us. With that came seeds of some wild grass known as parthenium. Wherever parthenium grows, it doesn't allow anything else to grow. And it's also a health hazard. And you'll find parthenium practically in the whole of North India. It's a gift of America to India, parthenium. And parthenium is so vicious and its seed is so powerful, you just can't destroy it. Once parthenium starts growing in a land, you know that your land is ruined. You go on cleaning it and cleaning it, it's very difficult. Our desires are like this parthenium grass. Its seeds, they are lying there. And the moment there is a rain, the moment there is some kind of manure, it sprouts. And it destroys everything that is noble in our life. The example often used in such cases is of a forest. No, our mind is not like a forest. Our mind is more like jungle of parthenium grass. It ruins everything, it destroys everything, it won't let anything else to grow. It just eats up everything and it won't die. Kashaya is the seed form. Those of you who do a lot of meditation might have noted that you're sitting for meditation and suddenly you remember somebody whom you had seen when you were barely 4-year-old or 5-year-old. Or you might remember a scene that you had seen when you were just 4-year, 5-year-old. Or you might remember some quarrel that you had with somebody, or some pain that was inflicted upon you, like that, it just goes on, and then your mind gets fixed completely. What do you do about it? Nothing. Buddhi, the intellect, the power of the mind that takes our life forward, the right thinking stuff, it immediately puts a full stop. It is like a goad. It's like a goad that controls the elephant. Says, no, no. See, in meditation, concentration is never a problem. Taking the mind away from something is the real problem. Most people don't even realize it. People come and say that I have problem concentrating. You don't have problem concentrating, because if you have problem concentrating, you will land in a lunatic asylum. People people who cannot focus on anything for a long time, see, who have nervous breakdowns, people who are under the spell of temporary or permanent insanity, one big problem with them is that they lose the sense of proportion. They lose the sense of continuity. So they're talking something, mid sentence they will break and go somewhere else. That means they're not able to concentrate. We don't have that problem. Our problem is when we sit for meditation, we get too much concentrated on things that we don't want. And that is what is known in yoga as pratyahar. You need to withdraw. Here, pratyahar is being discussed about three different things: laya, vikshep, kashaya. So we had discussed these things in the previous talk also, and here also. This is very important actually. And once your mind reaches equanimity, don't let it move from there. We are discussing meditation according to the path of knowledge, Jnana Marg. Meditation according to bhakti, where you are meditating on some form of God. On some form of God. You see, people who talk about formless, they can't even meditate properly. We don't we don't want to name any particular religion, but that's the problem. Anyone who knows about religion will know that you just cannot meditate on formless. You can take the name of the formless, but you cannot meditate. How can you meditate on the formless? Your mind is limited. A limited object can hold only a limited object. Mind can meditate only on God with form. It can never meditate on God the formless. So, in this case, when you are meditating on God with form, there also you need to do the same thing. You have to say, oh mind, come back and let us meditate on my Ishta. And you need to remind yourself, mind tends to go into stupor, mind tends to become hyperactive, and mind tends to rake up the old issues which are now in the seed form. And that's why destruction of these seeds becomes extremely important. Without having samadhi, these seeds cannot be destroyed. Sri Ramakrishna has beautifully said in Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, Jnani bhoy tarase. Even a Jnani is scared. Why is Jnani scared? Unless you have acquired samadhi. Vijnani means one who has experienced samadhi. Jnani means who is a little lower than that stage. Somebody has now written about Vijnanabad. God knows what he's writing. Because Vijnan means when you have Nirvikalpa Samadhi. That's the goal of Upanishads. That is what Acharya Shankar has been teaching. Not that Sri Ramakrishna had taught something new. So just getting some quotation from here and that quotation from there doesn't prove anything new. These are all product of immature minds. Sri Ramakrishna says, a jnani, even a jnani is scared, and he gives the example of Vasist, a person like Vasist. Indeed, why? Because the seeds of all your acts are very much there. And because they are there, they might sprout any minute. But once you become Jnani, once you have known Advaita, once you have reached that state of Samadhi where that ultimate oneness, once you are established in that knowledge of oneness, because knowledge of oneness and oneness, these are one and the same thing, then these seeds get destroyed. Then nothing can distract you. Na स्वादेत सुखम तत्र निस्संग प्रज्ञा भवेत निश्चलम निश्चरित चित्तम eki कुर्यात प्रयत्नतः. We are discussing Upanishads. Upanishads belong to Brahma Vidya. Brahma Vidya means oneness. That oneness is being explained here in verse number 45. As you meditate, powers will come to you. Powers are bound to come to you. And more importantly, those of you who have listened to our talks on inspired talks of Swami Vivekananda, there Swamiji has in the beginning itself explained that as you start advancing spiritually, good things and bad things will start coming to you in quick succession. A worldly person enjoys happiness for a long time. A worldly person suffers miseries for a very long time. But a person given to meditation, a person given to spiritual life, a monk, he has to suffer a lot because he enjoys a lot. And suffering and enjoyment, they both come in quick succession. Quick succession. Something good happens today, somebody will insult you tomorrow, somebody will hurt you tomorrow. It only means that your karma is getting cleared out very quickly, of both good and bad. In this case, the idea is to move towards oneness. So even when you are enjoying meditation, this is the last. First was tamas, second was rajas, third was the seed form, and is the fourth. Gita, very beautifully. We have our talks on Gita. If you have not listened, you should listen to our Gita talks. They are good, based on Acharya Shankara's commentary. Sattvam Sukham Sanjayati. There are three gunas, there are three qualities, Sattva, Rajas, Tamas. When you are meditating, all these three become extremely powerful. Tamas takes you towards sleep, Rajas makes you hyper, and Sattva lets you enjoy meditation. You are enjoying, but your goal is not enjoyment. Once, one of our senior monks, not that I mean any insult to him, but these are common expressions. And one senior monk told one of my brother monks in Bengali, brother, you came here to find peace. Did you find peace? And that young monk, intelligent person, wise person, learned person, he instantly replied, Swamiji, I didn't come here for peace. I came here for knowledge. Knowledge of Atman. If that knowledge gives me peace, well and good. And if the path to that knowledge is beset with suffering or other kind of problems, so much the better for it. Please remember this. Our goal is knowledge of oneness. Because oneness is knowledge. Nothing less than that. And if there is suffering for it, let there be suffering. If you are having good time, have good time. Nothing less than that. No tamas, no rajas, no sattva. Even enjoying that state, to aspire for happiness, to aspire for pleasant feeling, that's not the goal of meditation. Dear listeners, those of you who are listening very carefully and intently and trying to understand it, you'll realize that most things that are being parroted in the name of meditation is utter trash. Utter trash. Meditation means that pleasurable feeling that you get during meditation, thinking of, say, Sri Ramakrishna or whoever your East is, even that is to be shunned. What is the goal? To realize God. Swami Vivekananda very clearly told his disciples, our goal is God realization. Nothing less than that will do. Dear listeners, your goal is God realization. Your goal is self realization. Nothing less than that will do. This is what Mandukya Karika is teaching us. Neither laya, nor vikshep, nor kasaya, nor rasaswada. So it says that if you feel that you are enjoying the rest of that meditation, no, stay detached. Stay detached. And in the process, if your mind is trying to come out, see, unless you get samadhi, these problems will be there and they are disastrous. We don't run after our objects, the physical objects that there are, we don't run after them. Our organs, they don't run after objects. Our senses, they also don't run after objects. It's the mind that runs. Why? Mind is the pleasure bank. It has experienced all the pleasures. It's also the bank for pain, and it wants to stay away from that. And from there, it instructs the senses to take in things that are pleasurable. And those senses pass on those information. And from there, the mind passes on the information to organs of action, act like this. For example, those of you who like music, you are meditating. Those of you who might have read my book, Param, there is a description where Param is meditating and he hears one strand of music from somewhere, and suddenly he gets up to go and listen intently. Your mind has that your mind has that seed, and it wants to enjoy it. If need be, it will instruct the organs of action, that is legs, to go towards that. We are not guilty. Our organs are not guilty. Our senses are not guilty. The real problem lies with the mind. Mind. It drowns you in the world. Mind takes you to God. What an amazing thing. What an amazing thing. This mind. Just an amazing thing. Our Acharya, Gaudapada explains, if you are a yogi and if you want to attain samadhi, then make sure not to enjoy sattva. That means when your mind is totally focused, you are meditating and you are enjoying it. Even that is not permitted. That means your mind has reached a very high level of concentration, and yet another part of your mind is keeping an eye on that, says that, well, I'm enjoying, I must stop it. Why? Because the enjoyment that you are getting is from sattva guna. And guna, sattva, rajas, tamas, these three belong to maya. These three belong to prakriti. These three belong to avidya. The discussion till now, starting from day one, has been that Our goal of life is to go beyond Maya. Our goal of life is to go beyond Prakriti. Our goal of life is to go beyond ignorance. See, normally we think ignorance means we have some kind of ignorance and we want to gain knowledge. No, it's not that. Everything, everything which has the property of sattva, rajas, tamas, everything that has any kind of darkness, any kind of stupor, anything that has any kind of activity, and anything that has any kind of happiness, the characteristic of sattva is sukha and jnana, love for knowledge and love for pleasure, happiness. If your mind is dwelling on knowledge, or if your mind is dwelling on happiness, you are in sattva guna. And if you are in sattva guna, you are under bondage. It needs to be cut asunder. To move on. No pain, no pleasure, no stupor, no activity, mental activity, hyper, nothing. To just move on. These are higher meditations. So you focus on what? Since this is the path of knowledge, you focus on satta matram, pure existence. Only existence, nothing outside existence, pure existence. Those who practice the path of devotion, for them also, it's satta matram, but of God, your Ishta. Only God exists. Only God exists, nothing else exists. When we say that Brahma Satyam Jagat Mithya, Brahman is truth and this world is false. Those who follow the path of devotion, they also say the same thing. God alone is truth. Everything else is false. Sri Ramakrishna had said beautifully in Bengali, Mairi Bolchi. I swear. What? Ishwar boy ami kichu janina. I know nothing other than God. That means other than God, everything else is mithya. Once you go beyond these four distractions, yada na liyate chittam, nacha vikshipyate punaha, aninganam anabhasam nispannam brahma tattada. Your mind now loses its characteristic of being with sattva rajas tamas and merges in Brahman. Brahman, whose characteristic has been defined beautifully. Now, when mind does not lapse into inactivity and is not distracted by desires, that's to say, when it remains unshakable and does not give rise to appearances, it verily becomes Brahman. Your mind, what a rascal it is. It's a real rascal. When you want to rest it, it becomes active. When you want to make it active, it goes into rest. When you want to meditate, you start feeling sleepy. In higher meditation, these obstructions come. And yet, when it reaches the state of equanimity, when there is neither stupor nor activity nor enjoyment, then what happens? It becomes one with Brahman. Mind doesn't remain mind. Is that in that state, the mind that is meditating, the process of meditation, and the object of meditation, they all become one. Why? Because in the path of knowledge, you are meditating on pure existence. And because there is only pure existence, so now there will be no mind. Obviously, it's such a simple thing. For example, supposing your Ishta is Shiva, and you say Shiva alone exists, only Shiva exists, and you are meditating in such a way that nothing else remains. Not even Kailash remains where Shiva stays, and not even Parvati remains, who is the power of Shiva. Then what happens? Only Shiva remains. Only Shiva. Where is Shakti now? Gone. Where is Kailash? Gone. So where is your mind? Gone. What remains? Only Shiva. How is it different from Brahman? It is non-different. An immature mind has been sending me mails nowadays, every regularly telling me that how Ramakrishna mission has gone wrong and talking only about Advaita. In what way then it is different from Shankar Mutt or something? So I replied him once, twice, thrice, and then I said, now I will block you. Because these are mature minds, uncontrolled mind. They don't even know what they're talking. When your mind reaches that state where you realize that nothing exists other than Shiva, when you realize that there nothing exists other than God, how is it different from Advaita? It's in no way different. It's a oneness, the pure existence. A person who has taken the path of knowledge, he reaches a state where he realizes that there is isness, there is pure existence, nothing else. And a person who is meditating on God, he realizes that God alone exists, nothing else exists. How is it different? They are not at all different. No. In that state, you have gone completely beyond tamas, rajas, and sattva. Yadana liyate chittam. When the mind doesn't lapse into laya, na vikshipyate punaha, neither in vikshepa. And it doesn't even give rise to appearances, seed form. Mind has this special power to go into future and stay in the past. It verily becomes Brahman. It doesn't acquire the knowledge of Brahman because knowledge of Brahman and Brahman, these are one and the same thing as explained earlier. So what happens then? Acharya Shankara explains that Yatha Dipo Nivatasto is this verse is from Gita. If you keep a lamp, oil lamp, in a place where there is no movement of air, it doesn't flicker. The flame doesn't flicker. It then looks like a painting. It then looks like a solid object. Those of you who have some knowledge of physical chemistry, physical chemistry, physical chemistry is quite similar to physics. Whenever there is combustion, the heat that is within certain element that is being released because of combustion, and they become illumined, they become lighter. So when oil burns, it converts into gas, emits light, becomes smoke, or simply heat and goes away. It has now reached the state of being lighter molecule compared to heavier molecule when it was oil, and much more heavy when it's say coal or charcoal. So now it can easily be swayed, and that's why air can sway it. Air is practically the molecules of air are heavier than the molecules that are burning there, so it can be moved. If there is no air, air will always be there, of course, because without air there will not be any burning. Movement of air is bare minimum, because it can never happen that air will have no movement. Air will be moving, but movement is barest of minimum. You can see that flame like a solid something, like a painting, like an object. Mind becomes completely stilled, still. Once your mind becomes still, it means tamas, rajas, and sattva, they have lost their functioning. And that's when your mind becomes one with Brahman. Now you are one Brahman. Once you are, once you have tasted that, once you have known Brahman, you have become Brahman. You can never again fall, as Sri Ramakrishna said. Is the Jnani, those who have not yet have experienced samadhi, samadhi of non-duality. Only they are scared. Once you experience it, there is no way that you can fall down from there. Absolutely no way. No, you have known the truth now. Not only you have known the truth, you have become one with it. You are now Brahman. And then what happens? Swastham, Shantam, Sanirvanam, Akatyam, Sukham Uttamam, Ajam Ajena Gena Sarvagyam Parichakshate. What is the nature of, what is the characteristic of that Brahman? That's being explained. This supreme bliss, once you reach that state, it's not only the knowledge of the supreme, it's supreme bliss. Abides in the self. And it is peace, swastham. Swastha, it's health. Essentially, it means peace. Swastham. Swastham is swastham, staying within oneself. And because of that, once you are within yourself, it's all knowledge, it's all bliss, it's all joy, it's all health, it's all peace, etc. So same thing is being reiterated in different terms. Swastham, Shantam, Sanirvanam. It is liberation, peace, and cannot be described in words. Akatyam. So Brahman cannot be described, Atman cannot be described. Ajam ajena gyayena. It's unborn. It's always there. And it's omniscient. It knows everything. And that's what your mind becomes one with, which is the true object of knowledge. Sarvagyam parichakshate. Sukham uttamam. This kind of joy comes only to a yogi who has experienced Advaita. Once you can reach that state, once you have become one with Atman, these are the natural corollaries that follow. You are at peace, absolute peace. You are into bliss, and there is liberation because now you have become one with the finite or infinite. Why it happens like this? What is the ultimate truth? It's concluded in last verse. Na kashi jayate jiva sambhavosya na vidyate. Etad uttamam satyam yatra kinchin na jayate. The last conclusion. No jiva ever comes into existence. There exists no cause that can produce it. The supreme truth is that nothing ever is born. Ajatvad. Nothing ever is born. Nothing ever is born. Na kaschit jayate jivaha. Jivaha. The soul. The individual being. What we call as individual being, it says, it's never born. Just remember what you have achieved by knowing Brahman. What you achieve by becoming one with Brahman. Nothing. You achieve nothing. You become swastham. What you are, you have become now. You are established in that now. Why? Sambhavasya na vidyate. It's just not possible. Why? Because to make something happen, you need to have a cause. There is no cause. Brahman being infinite, there is nothing that can push Brahman into becoming something. Etat uttamam satyam. This is the ultimate truth. Uttam satya. What is the ultimate truth? The ultimate truth that there is nothing called soul. There is nothing called individual being. There never was any creation. Ajatvad. So what is all this that I am saying? This is pure Brahman. This is what we have been discussing from verse number 1. So conclusion is verse number 48, which is extremely, extremely important. Param Satya, Uttam Satya. What is Param Satya? Na kaschit jayate jivaha. What we call as individual beings, me, you, he, she, these were never born. Because there is no cause that can make the effect possible. This is ultimate truth. This is the real truth. Yatra kinchan na jayate. No one is ever born. Nothing is ever born. That's why this is Ajatvad. Nothing was ever born. Because Brahman, it's pure existence. There is no force that can change this pure existence into relative existence. My dear listeners, you must have realized that this truth, this highest level of truth, is not meant for everyone. Only few can take it. Only few can walk the talk, as they say. So, with that ends the 3rd chapter. Next day we start Alat Shanti, the cessation. Because the goal of Mandukya Karika is to help us realize that this phenomenal world doesn't exist. It's like a ball of fire moving quickly in a circle, and we think that this is a circle of fire, Alat. This has to calm down. This movement has to stop. The whole thing is moving, and we are identified with it, and we think that this phenomenal, this universe of phenomena, this is real. But no, it is not real. Thank you so much. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.